What is up, guys? Stu here. So earlier this week I got a chance to check out the Hitman's Bodyguard, starring Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson. So let's talk about that shit. So the Hitman's Bodyguard, if you have not heard about it, comes to us from Patrick Hughes, the director of such acclaimed films as The Expendables 3. And it's basically a action comedy flick about a hitman who needs to testify against a dictator in order to stop him. But he needs to be transported from one location to the other, so they hire a bodyguard to help him do that. And the two have a bit of a past, and they aren't the best friends. And I didn't really have many expectations for this one. Not the biggest fan of Patrick Hughes' previous work. I can't stand here and say that The Expendables 3 is a groundbreaking piece of cinema, because it just isn't. But I'm a big fan of the cast behind this one, and I'm always hoping to be pleasantly surprised. But after seeing it, the few expectations that I might have had were quickly kind of settled back down. This is not really a great film at all, to be honest. As I said, it stars Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson in the two lead roles, and the two of them do pretty serviceable jobs. I've said this before, but I'm a big fan of Ryan Reynolds, and it's impossible to not like him in a film. He is an inherently likable dude. He's quite charming, he's witty, he's fun to watch, he's entertaining basically in pretty much everything he does. And here, he's just serviceable, he is entertaining to watch, probably the most entertaining to watch, so I like the Ryan Reynolds-isms he brings to the role as usual. But Samuel L. Jackson is good, but he has a tendency to do these roles which basically you're just watching Samuel L. Jackson, and after a while it can get a little bit stale. And I think this is one of those. I wasn't really the biggest fan of what he was doing here. But there's also other people in the cast around him who aren't really doing great jobs as well, who should be doing great jobs. Namely Gary Oldman, who's always great, and here is... well, he's shit, to be honest. But I don't think that's really down to him as an actor and more down to the stuff he's working with, so... he's kind of in a weird one there, Gary. But Selma Hayek's also in the film, and in a similar situation to Gary Oldman, is given genuine shite to work with, so obviously doesn't really excel beyond that. But the direction from Patrick Hughes here is, on the whole as well, pretty uninspiring. I mean, there are moments that are alright and seem to be heading somewhere which is actually a lot of fun, but for the most part the direction felt like some kind of budget Matthew Vaughn film in the tone and style it was going for. Felt like a director who'd seen some great films from like Matthew Vaughn and Edgar Wright and was like, I can definitely do that style, it's going to be great, and then goes to do it and you're like, well, there's a reason you're not fucking doing a lot more shit, because you're not that great, to be honest. So yeah, most of the sequences from a direction standpoint in this film left me kind of wondering what they'd been like if they'd been done by a better director, which is the exact opposite of what you want an audience to be thinking when they're watching your films. But I guess some of the action was fun. I mean, Expendables 3, his previous film, is a big action film with some of the best action stars in the world in it, so at least going into this one, you kind of expect him to get some of the action, and sometimes that is the case. I mean, particularly the chase sequences in the film, they were actually quite fun to watch. There's one big one towards the end through Amsterdam, which, although not amazing and perfect, did actually work as a chase sequence and was effective and did what it wanted, so I did get a little bit sucked into that one. But the rest of the action is okay, verging on just straight up shit. Mainly in the hand-to-hand combat, whenever a character goes towards another and starts to throw down, you immediately get into the whole shaky cam, very zoomed in images, which are just clearly covering up the fact that the stuntmen aren't particularly as convincing as they should be. And then you get like a billion edits and cuts between someone just laying a punch on someone else. So whilst characters are throwing down, I was clueless as to what was actually happening in the scene, so I just didn't get sucked into those action set pieces at all. But going into this film, what it looked like is that it was mainly a comedy with some action elements, so despite the fact that the action wasn't actually that good on a whole, it should have been able to fall back on the fact that it is just a fun film that is funny to watch and entertaining in that sense. But I don't even think you can argue that, because it's not funny, even slightly. And that is a real shame because of the cast we've got here. Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson together in a film like this should really work. It should at the very least provide some fun chemistry and dynamics that are entertaining to watch. But it just ended up being really, really annoying and repetitive to me. I mean, their personalities definitely come through and are mildly entertaining, particularly on the half of Ryan Reynolds, but the stuff they're actually saying is not funny. It just isn't. There's many moments where I was like, okay, Ryan Reynolds is being Ryan Reynolds, but when I actually think about what you just said, there was no comedy there whatsoever. You're just saying shit. But everyone around me in the cinema was loving it, which is even more weird to me. And there are some running gags that it keeps coming back to, which get worse and worse each time they're there, to the point where I'm just like, why did no one in the editing room think, hey, that's not funny, let's just take it out? no one's gonna miss it. Particularly basically everything with Salma Hayek's character. She just says fuck a lot and is very angry about stuff. And the poor writing of the jokes is something that translates into pretty much every other aspect of the screenplay here, because despite also not being funny at all, it is just sort of all over the place in what it's trying to actually do here. It starts off weirdly very heavy on the kind of action thriller side of things, and there aren't actually that many jokes compared to building up of the plot around the action. And then it suddenly becomes this kind of two eccentric characters thrust together, look how funny that is thing. And then it becomes this weird story about love and romance, which came completely out of nowhere and ended up going pretty much nowhere. And then it ties that all together in a really weird climax, and then it ends. So it was either trying or failing at comedy, or trying and failing at making a genuine plot that works. You just can't have either of those, because either of those options is bad. But the whole love and romance stuff that's thrown in was particularly weird to me, because the film never gives any chance to actually empathize with any of the relationships in the film. You basically just see either of the characters talking about how much they love their wife or girlfriend, and then at the end they're like, yeah, cool, I love her, love is everything you want, it's all about romance and relationships, and tries to get a little bit deep on you. And I'm like, okay. And the execution of the weird plot is the most repetitive thing ever, because the scenes essentially just go, Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds bicker and fight about which one of them's better than the other, and then they get onto the topic of their girlfriends and how much they love their girlfriends and how they met, and then someone will come in and they'll have to shoot them and fight them, and then you're just rinsing and repeating that scene over and over until you get to the credits. Yes, it gets incredibly stale incredibly fast. So at the end of the day, what we have here is an action comedy which is never really that cool from an action side of things, but also never really that funny. It's in a weird limbo between them. It can never effectively do one or the other there, so it never really amounts to anything. But at the end of the day, I don't think I'll ever really have the desire to watch this one again, which is a big shame considering the talent behind it, and the fact that it did have a lot of potential in there to be a kind of trashy, guilty pleasure comedy, but it just didn't do anything really for me. It just sort of all happened and then ended. So I'm going to go ahead and give The Hitman's Bodyguard a 2 stars. Really, really underwhelmed by this one. It should have been at least fun, but it wasn't even that. I'm quite interested to see if Patrick Hughes ever really does nail that kind of Matthew Vaughn action comedy style flick, because if he did in the future, his films could have a lot of potential to go somewhere. But at the moment, it just feels like a budget version of a better director's vision, which is never fun for anyone. At all. But what about you guys? Have you seen The Hitman's Bodyguard yet, or are you excited to check it out? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know. And as usual, if you like this review and you want to see me talk about more shit, please go ahead and click subscribe. But until next time, stay beautiful, mother truckers.